I'm the head of emerging talent at JP Morgan. It's lovely to be here in Manchester today. Going to just talk to you a little bit about the company, what we do, the programs that we offer here as well. I have Jamie with me as well, who's one of our software engineering graduate apprentices, I should say, from our Glasgow office. So you've got to kind of get to hear from him as well a little about what it's like to be an apprentice at the firm too. Credentials-wise, I've worked at the company for 22 years, which is longer than some of you have been alive, which is super depressing. And I've done 8 different jobs in my time at the company in a number of locations around the world. Although I'm currently in a role where obviously my responsibility is recruiting and looking after our apprentices whilst they're on program as well, my background is actually nothing to do with HR or anything like that. I hold a degree in geology, which I've used almost never, and I've spent my first 8 or 9 years at the company working in currencies and commodities at the bank, so much more on the kind of business side of things. Why tell you that? Because it kind of gives you an idea that not everyone at JP Morgan is what you would expect them to be. We're not all accountants. We don't all have degrees in maths or economics or business. We don't all have degrees. And a lot of people have come to the firm through lots of very different channels. And that really is what led us to start our apprenticeships 10 years ago. So we're celebrating 10 years of apprentices at the firm this year. The kind of historically, we would be bringing junior talent into the firm purely through our graduate channels, and we continue to do that today. But the feeling was that there is, and I think continues to be, an increasing number of students who are thinking, is traditional university necessarily the right path for me? Okay, and it's healthy to ask that question. It's always healthy to ask those questions. And what we didn't want to do was miss out on that pool of talent. So I was asked to set up a team to essentially start looking at what pathway could we build for those students who are asking that question to follow to join the company in a slightly non-traditional sense. And that's where the apprenticeships kind of came from. JP Morgan is a firm. If anyone's not massively familiar with us, I won't be offended at all. We're not a household name necessarily in the UK. JP Morgan is one of the largest investment banks in the world. We have around 250,000 staff in about 110 countries globally. So it's a truly global firm. We're one of only 3 what you call full service banks, which means we're present in every financial market and every financial sector around the world. So for our clients, a lot of whom are kind of also exhibiting today, that means we can bring to bear a really consolidated total package for them. So imagine if you were someone like McDonald's. You know, we might be helping them with payroll. We might be helping them with their pensions. We might be helping them invest into new markets, look at things like mergers and buyouts and anything they're trying to do really attached to the financial world. So it can be quite broad. It's more than just accounting, right? JP Morgan is much more than just accountants and traders. They would actually make up a pretty low percentage, actually, of the total number of staff that we have within the firm. But as well as kind of doing that on the finance side, we're actually also the 6th biggest tech firm in the world. So we employ more developers at JP Morgan than there are at Google. And you don't necessarily make that connection between the financial services world and that of technology, but it's vital. It's vital those two worlds are really well connected. To give you an idea of the scale and why the technology is so important, as a firm, we're currently looking after somewhere in the region of $22 to $23 trillion worth of assets. That's not profits. That's assets. So that's how much money we're looking after for our clients all over the world. And that money will take lots of different forms. It could be cash, it could be stocks, it could be bonds, it could be gold, it could be oil, it could be property investment, it could be lots of different forms. And it doesn't sit still. If money's sitting still, it's not working for the clients, and the clients want the money to work for them all the time. That's the kind of the skill within financial services. Again, to give you an idea of how quickly that money moves, most of the time now, I'm based out of our office down in Bournemouth. Again, you don't think of Bournemouth as a financial centre, you think of it as a retirement home. But we have a large office there, there's about 4,000 staff down in Bournemouth. It's one of our large operations centres. Bournemouth alone moves £1.3 trillion every single day at a rate of about 5,000 transactions a second. So there is huge amounts of data being moved around. Obviously, it has to be done in a massively secure way. So now you can see why technology is so important to us. Because what we don't have are rows and rows of staff lined up like battery chickens, smashing out deals at a rate of more than 1 a second each. 99% of the transactions we do are what we call STP, straight through processed, means no one has to touch them from the point at which the client executes the trades all the way through to settlement, the money moving, it's kind of hands off. The operations teams in finance, they get involved with the really complicated transactions, or if something were to go wrong, because when you're moving money at that rate and at that scale, if something goes wrong, clients tend to get quite upset quite quickly, and understandably so. So you've got to fix a problem preferably before it's even a problem. So finance and tech are the two kind of worlds that we can kind of talk about. So if I talk about the apprenticeship options that we have apprenticeships, funnily enough, in finance and tech. So on the financial services side, we have a program which runs in Bournemouth and in London. But apprentices come from all over the country. So on our stand today, so Shabazz is on our stand today. Shabazz went to a college here in Manchester, and he's on our finance program. He's a second-year finance apprentice. He's completed his first year, so that gets him his level 4 apprenticeship. And he also gets his first professional qualification, which is it's a bit of a mouthful, this one. It's the Investment Operations Certificate from the Chartered Institute of Securities Investments, or the IOC from the CISI. We use a lot of acronyms in our world. So he's finished that. And then we have a really interesting kind of fork in the road on that finance program. They can continue and do the back 3 years of their program. They get their level 6 apprenticeship, and they get an honours degree from Exeter University as well. They obtain the CFA level 1 qualification, which is a really well-known international qualification. And obviously, they're not paying any tuition cost or cost for professional registration there. That's all covered within the apprenticeship, and instead they're earning the salary. So that pathway 1, as I say, they can continue up through do their level 6. Fantastic, and obviously hopefully then remain at the company at the end, and our retention rate is around 99.4% of our apprentices. The other thing that can happen, and what Shabazz has done, is at the end of their first kind of 15 months on the finance program, they can apply to our front office apprenticeship. So we have apprenticeships now within our markets and investment banking front office. So these are the sales trading desks, which are kind of quite highly sought after by some people, right, if that's a career you want to go down. Historically, again, you'd only have been able to access that through the graduate programs, but now you can access as an apprentice too. So Shabazz has done that, and he will now do exactly the same academics, so same degree, same CFA. He has to also sit the FCA, Financial Conduct Authority exams too, which he's already done and passed. But he's now on the trading floor, not as like a desk assistant or something like that. He's actually on the trading floor as a sales or tradesperson on the floor today, which is really exciting. He's 20 years old, right? Still got 2 years to go before he'll complete his degree. When he's done that, he'll be in a really exceptional position, I think. So that's the kind of financial services program. And then running alongside that, we have the technology program, which has two slightly different flavours, really reflecting the slight differences in how apprenticeships work between England and Scotland. So the consistent part is they're 4 years long. You get a full degree through them. The differences are in England, that degree will come from Exeter, and in Scotland, that degree will come from Strathclyde. In Scotland, the programme is based purely around software engineering. That's the kind of specialism. It's a software engineering. They call it a graduate apprenticeship, is the kind of the appropriate terminology in Scotland. The English programme is slightly different. It's like a core and options module. So the first year, they all do the same kind of core subjects: introduction to computing, maths for computing, a couple of programming languages, Python's in there mainly, a bit of Java as well. And then they choose a specialism, because if I look at how technology is broken down within the bank, and there's 67,000 technologists at the firm now, very, very crudely, I could put them into 4 areas, right? So you've got the software engineers, so people writing the kind of programs we use, upgrading the programs we use. A lot of the stuff that we use is our own. We develop it in-house. You'll have the infrastructure engineers, so people looking after the kind of the servers, the cloud-based solutions that we use, a lot of the kind of elasticity-based solutions we have in there. Cybersecurity. I've told you how much money we're looking after for our clients. If you're a cyber terrorist, we're probably on your top 10 list of places you'd like to go shopping, right? We will get attacked every single day, every minute of every day, by cyber criminals trying to access our system. So we have to have exceptionally good cyber defences. Our cyber team is split into 2. You have the offensive and the defensive team. The defensive team are quite obviously there to protect us against cyber attacks. The offensive team are not, as the name implies, there to attack back. That's not allowed, much as we'd like to. Their job is to come to the office and try to attack us as well. Because if they could find a vulnerability, theoretically, so could somebody else. And then the last group are the data analytics team. This is the kind of most rapidly growing area, I think, in tech, certainly on the Bournemouth campus currently. And what I say about that is you need to start thinking that data is a currency. Data is now a product. We can use data, we can package data for our clients, and actually sell it back to them. So technology starts to become a profit-making centre for the bank now, rather than just a cost, because we spend about $12 billion a year on technology alone at the firm, keeping it all super, super current. When we're doing that with data, again, if we took McDonald's as our example from earlier, we'll have a lot of information about McDonald's. Now, obviously, we can't give that information to anybody else, but actually, we can sell their own information back to them, right? We package it all together. We say, look, you're doing this with us. Actually, if we refine this data for you or reorder how it's stored, it can be more efficient, you can actually use it more profitably, and they'll pay us a fee to do that. So data analytics now becoming a really interesting product within tech. Whew, I've talked a lot. Jamie, let's come to you. Can you talk to us a bit about like what it's like to be an apprentice day to day? Like how does that kind of work for you?
Yeah, definitely. So being an apprentice, every day can kind of be a bit different, to be honest. So a typical week for me, Monday to Thursday, I would typically be in the office, just working on the kind of different things that my team works on. And on the Friday, so it's slightly different up in Glasgow, I believe. Once every 4 weeks, I'm actually in university in person. And the rest of the time, it's just online work that I'm doing from home. So that's what a typical week would look like for me.
And the kind of work you're doing, like how does that relate for your studies? How does that relate to the work you do in the workplace?
Yes, so I'm doing a software development apprenticeship, and it's the same sort of stuff I'm doing in work that I'm doing in uni. So in work, my team works on wholesale credit risk applications. So still trying to kind of learn it myself, to be honest. But yeah, we make different applications for credit risk and analysing that risk. And in university, we're also doing software engineering, so it ties in there. The same sort of skills between both areas.
Yeah. And I think that's for me one of the key differences about an apprenticeship versus traditional university study. It used to be, if we wound back pre-2015, 2014, when degree apprenticeships first came out, the question was, do you want to get a degree? Fine, go to university. Do you want to start working? Here's an apprenticeship. Okay. Now the question is different. The question is, how do you want to obtain your degree? Okay. How would you like to study for it? If you want to study in a traditional academic type setting, go to university. Do it that way. Absolutely fine. You'll learn loads, right? Look at graduate programs. Look to coming through that route. It's a fantastic, fantastic route to follow. However, if you think you're someone, actually, I might like to start learning this by doing it, and if you're ready, and that's a legitimate question because you might not be, but if you are ready and you think you're ready, start looking at potential apprenticeship opportunities, because you'll be learning something directly relevant every day. You'll be applying your knowledge that you learn at university every day. It will be super current because it has to be, because half of it's coming from the workplace anyway. And the other benefit, obviously, of being paid whilst you're doing it. Let's talk a bit about selection, how we kind of get there. So the cycle for our hiring of apprentices, we've lined up quite strongly alongside UCAS, because in my mind, students should be thinking about, when they make UCAS applications, they should be thinking about apprenticeships at the same time. Okay? Because whilst you're limited to 5, I think, university applications you can make through UCAS today, you can make as many apprenticeship applications as you like. Okay? It is, I'm both happy and not happy with the current setup. I'll explain what I mean. It's harder to find out about apprenticeships. Okay? You want to find out about universities, UCAS, Unifrog, job done. Right? Super easy, information's really nicely laid out, you can do comparisons, it's wonderful. With apprenticeships, it's a little bit harder. Yes, there's a centralised government website, and it's okay, it's not awful. Right? You can find the basics on there, but generally speaking, when you come to start making applications, you're going to have to go to each company's individual site. Each company's going to have their own selection process, and from your point of view, I get that, that's frustrating, but that's kind of how it is today. So I don't like it on your behalf because of that frustration, because the amount of time and effort you've got to put into making an application. I do like it because those people who've made the effort have already shown me something. They've already shown me they've put themselves out there, they're interested, they're asking that question, like I said earlier, they're asking that question of, is this right for me or not? And they've started doing something about it. So we open our applications around the first week of October, and then we kind of go through a selection process, which we'll talk about in just a second. Entry requirements, so we do have academic entry requirements. Some companies have started to drop those. I have a marginally controversial view on that, which is that I'm keen to maintain an element of academic requirement for our course, purely because there is an academic element to the programme, and you have to be able to pass the degree, right, in order to kind of proceed with your apprenticeship. But we try and keep the academic requirements to a level I think is realistic. So on the finance programme, for example, you have to achieve 3 Cs at A level with no grade below C, any subject. Maths and English, GCSE 5 or above. Okay, so we try to keep it quite achievable. It is not the case that I then get on my applicants and I rank them by their predicted A-level grades and go, I'm just going to take all the A-star students, because I had my intern a few years ago do some analysis of the apprentices' grades versus their performance in the workplace, zero correlation. Right? The only correlation he could get, and it's one of those really obvious statistical statements, is he said if someone had done maths, a science, and a humanity, that on average they'd be performing about 5 to 10% more strongly. Well, that's a really obvious thing because they're obviously a generalist, right? But aside from that, there's nothing there. So we instead focus much more on the individual and their own skills and aptitudes and attitudes. That's what it's all about. The tech program, slightly higher requirements. It's 3 Bs for tech. The learning is slightly different. And one of the subjects should be a maths or computing subject. But again, the others can be whatever you like. BTEC, fine. T-levels, fine. Right? They're all equally achievable for us. For the program in Glasgow, it's 4 Bs from your hires, isn't it, that we look for there. So, Jamie, talk to me about the selection process. What are the kind of stages? What do you think about it?
So I thought it was a good process, yeah. So the process, just to make everyone aware, is slightly different in Glasgow. So the things I did might be, or it's not really that the steps are different, it's just a different ordering of the steps. So I found out about the apprenticeship from my lecturer at college. I went on the JP Morgan website and I put my details in and I got a link to the hire view. So it's just a little video interview. You can explain a bit about yourself, and then if you're successful with that, you'll go on to the assessment centre. Now the assessment centre, if you haven't done anything like that before, it's a bit strange, but it's good as well because it lets you, get experience working as a group, and it lets you show JP Morgan how well you work in a group, how well you can, keep the task flowing. So it's quite good. And then after that, there was another step that I went to called the Insight Evening, which is where you actually get to go and speak to different managers of different teams. For me, it was at the Glasgow office. And I was able to talk to a manager and an apprentice. I think it was 4 of each I spoke to. So that let me get a bit of insight about the company, let them learn a bit about me as well. And that was the final stage for me. I think in the England ones, the hire view is at the end, but it's the same sort of process.
Yeah. And timing-wise, for that, as I say, applications start in October, and we try to be all done with offers made by kind of February, early March, so we can then leave the students alone to finish their exams and coursework in their last year of secondary education. So you'd get like a conditional offer, just as you would from university. And a conditional offer would not be based on your grades. It would simply say, you've got a conditional offer, so long as you meet those minimum requirements I just gave you, we're kind of all good at that point, right? And then they join us. We do a little 2-week boot camp when they start. So all the apprentices from across the UK descend on Bournemouth. And we kind of have 2 weeks with them there, kind of doing company induction and stuff like that. And then they start kind of with their teams and with their programs. So that's kind of our process. I can tell you starting salaries are £19,000 a year in Bournemouth and London, Bournemouth and Glasgow, £22,000 a year in London, just cost of living. They get pension, they get private healthcare, they become bonus eligible after the first year as well. Their salary will go up each year they're on the programme till the point they roll off. When they finish at the end of the 4 years, their salary will be in line with where a graduate would be where they finish their graduate programme. So to give you an idea, that means the apprentice gets there in 4 years. It takes a grad, let's say 3 years at university, a normal course, and then 2 years on their graduate programme. So actually the apprentices are a year ahead. Is that fair? Well, if we consider the 2 individuals at that point, the apprentice has 4 years of directly relevant experience in the workplace. They've got a degree and they've got professional qualifications. The graduates coming in, yes, they've got their degree, absolutely, but the limit of their work experience probably will be a 10 to 12-week internship they may have done and the 2 years on their programme. Okay, so that's why I think it's reasonable that the apprentice should be at least that level at that point. Whew, I've talked a lot. How should we do this? We'll go back to the stand in a second, because I know there's going to be someone else coming on. There's 4 of us there today, so you've got Asha, who's on the technology programme. She's based from Bournemouth. Shabazz, who's on the financial services programme, originally from Manchester, now working in London. And you've got Jamie here on the software engineering programme in Glasgow. So come ask them some questions, pick up some flyers. I would encourage you guys, for the students, start getting yourselves on LinkedIn if you're not there already. Start building your professional network. Start finding out what's out there. LinkedIn is a really good resource for that. You can find a lot of us on there and ask us some questions as well. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy your day.